football betting preview video. Ian, Cameron, and Conor Mac with you as we continue to go through every college football conference and team for that matter, getting you ready for the season, which is just less than 2 weeks away. In this video, we're going to look at the SEC. This is the conference that gets everybody fired up. The quote-unquote best damn conference in college football, top to bottom. And boy, it's sure looking that way this year. When you look at the conference odds, we've got Alabama, as usual, nothing new there. Your favorite to win the SEC, minus 140. Georgia, 4-1. Texas A&M, 12-1. Florida, 18-1. LSU, 30-1. Ole Miss, 33-1. Auburn, 50-1. Missouri and Kentucky, 60-1. Tennessee, 100-1. Mississippi State, 150-1. Arkansas, 250-1. South Kakalaki, 500-1. And Vanderbilt, 2,000-1. Man, it's funny on these conference odds boards, Connor, how you just see these teams like Kansas and Vanderbilt and all these bottom feeders and dregs just priced so much lower than the rest of the conference. But that is what it is here in this Arizona. You can mention them in the Pac-12. So there's just so many of these teams that are just way lower priced in the conference odds boards because of the shambles that the program is in. Let's start with a program that is not in shambles, anything but in shambles. The Alabama Crimson Tide. What can you say about this team when you look at how good they have been? Obviously, national champions looking to repeat after knocking off Ohio State in the national title game last year. But the quarterback that led them to that national championship, Mac Jones, no longer there. They turned things over to the sophomore. But guess what? A sophomore, but another 5-star. What else is new? Bryce Young, who people think actually probably going to end up being obviously more athletic and mobile, certainly, than Mac Jones, and could end up being every bit the accurate pocket passer as Mac Jones was. So that's just what Alabama does. You know, they just they lose a quarterback, they bring in another one. And you can say what you want about how good these quarterbacks become at the NFL level. There's been some issues there, but at the college level, they've certainly been outstanding. They lose, obviously, a lot of their skill position talent from last year, like Devontae Smith, like Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. Of course, Najee Harris off to the NFL as well with Pittsburgh now. So there's going to be some replacement there, but guess what? They reload at the skill positions. I'd expect them to do more of the same this year. Yeah, they're only 123rd in the country in returning production. But again, with a team like Alabama, you almost have to throw that number and that stat in the garbage because they just reload every year. They're going to be fine. But the problem is their win total is no bargain. I mean, you're talking, if you like, you basically have to go close to undefeated. They do have to go undefeated, if they're going to go over that win total. And this could be a year, with all the change, the new quarterback, the skill position talent changed a little bit. There's going to be some changes on the offense only has 4 returning starters. The defense definitely should be good, but you lose quarterback, running back, top 2 wide receivers, a bunch of change in the coaching staff and the offensive side of the football. I think the defense with the 8 returning starters is going to be good. Of course, Sark, a great play caller and OC for this team. He left to take the Texas Longhorns head coaching job. And here comes our guy, Bill O'Brien, rolling in here as the offensive coordinator. Now, look, I'm willing to separate Bill O'Brien, the moron, numbskull, numbnuts NFL guy, from the college guy. Because at the college level with Penn State, at the college level, Connor, with Penn State before, he was decent. He was pretty good in that role. So, you can't just say, wow, this guy was a complete imbecile at Houston with the Texans in the NFL, that now all of a sudden you got to look at it and say this offense is going to stink. He's not going to know what he's doing. I'm willing to leave the door. And look, if he's going to thrive anywhere as an OC, he's going to thrive at a place like Alabama, which is just always bringing in the best recruits, bringing in the best players they can on the offensive side of the football every year. So let's hold on the Bill O'Brien hate this time, as much as I've ripped on him in the NFL. I think this team's going to be an under the total team a little bit this year. I think they might change the way, like with Sark and the last couple of years, they played a faster tempo. They've really aired it out. With O'Brien, I could see them being more, let's get back to running the football just a little bit more. I'm not saying they're going to go back to the real old days of Alabama when Saban first got there and they're just going to run the football all the time. They won't with a guy like Bryce Young, but still, I think they'll be a little bit more conservative. The O-line could take some time to gel with the changes and a lot of new faces at the skill position talent. But by the midway part of the season, they'll have a very explosive offense. I don't doubt that. The defense might at the very beginning of the year be ahead of the offense. So I would lean a little bit with game totals under. I have no opinion on the win total other than I could only go under at this number because I think there's a better chance Alabama loses a game this year than them going undefeated. So at the win total where it is 11.5, I would only go under. They might be a little bit of value under the total with their game totals early in the year. And obviously from a bet on or bet against perspective, I think there's going to be some spots to bet against them. It's going to be difficult for them to keep on covering these big numbers like they often have the last couple of years. However, I do kind of like them in week 1 against Miami, laying the big number, just because they just lay the whipping down in week 1. And Saban is undefeated straight up, and I think he's something like 12-2 against the spread in season openers. So as much as I will look for spots to Alabama, I'm sure as hell not looking for week 1 to be that spot when they open up the year against Miami, especially a Hurricanes team with still some defensive questions and De'Aaron King coming off a serious injury. Is he going to be ready to play his best in that game against that strong Bama defense? So I think Bama and spots will be bet against, but I actually do like them a little bit in that season opener against the Canes. Connor, what do you think of Alabama?
Yeah, they're just Alabama. They always seem to just reload. But I think this year will be more of with O'Brien coming in and more their defense back, like you talked about, 8 starters, that their defense will be better, which the defense, maybe the last few years they gave up some points at times, but that offense was just so dynamic. But you talked about Harris, Smith, all those guys that they just reload, but it could be a little bit spotty. It could take some time. Maybe early on here. And you talked about Young being the quarterback. I think he'll be good. But when you put the win total, especially 11.5, they will lose a game, I think, for sure this year. Definitely one. Just too many shakeups, like you said, from the coaching, especially to the offense. So whether it's at Auburn, LSU, there's always one like Arkansas steps up or, Mississippi State, something like that. So if I were to bet, I think there's value. I mean, the win total is 11.5. I look under there. I think they lose one game. And last year, the last couple years, we always did it. I bet it a ton. Alabama first half, then they let the gas out the pedal. I don't know. I'm going to wait on them this year. I just want to see them the first few games with everybody new, like the new quarterback in Young, and the new weapons, which I'm sure just will be really good as well. But I'm just gonna go a little slow on betting them, and I think you could get big numbers. I always try to catch a team getting 50 points or 42 maybe, and getting a backdoor cover. Especially Saban, he likes to let off the pedal, at the very end of the game. So maybe look for some value in some of these teams, during the year they're going against.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind with Alabama in that regard is just how big is the point spread weekly going to be against them. I mean, at Florida and at Texas A&M, those 2 road games are about the most dangerous games for them outside of maybe LSU and maybe the opener against Miami, even though I don't think Miami is a legit threat to them in that game. So that's why they still could go undefeated, but I think there's more chances than certainly the last couple of years for them to at least lose a game and stumble in the regular season. So we'll see if they indeed can run the table or not. Arkansas Razorbacks now. Sam Pittman, second year as head coach. Man, this team impressed me last year. Don't forget about the straight up record. Okay, 3-7 straight up's not impressive, but they went on a strong 6-0 against the spread streak to begin the year. And then actually after that, they went 0-3-1 against the spread. But the bottom line was this was an undervalued team last year. And even though they were only 3-7 straight up, the fact that they covered 6 games and ended up 6-3-1 against the spread for the 10 games they played last year tells you this team was undervalued. They might be again. I was impressed with how hard this team played. The effort was really, really good. They gave good teams like Texas A&M a battle. They hung with Florida and that really good offense of Kyle Trask for a half last year. They took LSU right down to the wire. I mean, they had some really good should have beat Missouri and only lost by 2. They did get whipped by Bama, but, very competitive football team last year. And this year, second year in the system should be good. Defensive coordinator Barry Odom, who they got from Missouri. He's done a good job with his defense. They should be even better this year when you look at what Arkansas is bringing back on the defensive side of the football coming into the year. There's things to like there. 10 returning starters back on that side of the ball. They're going to be, I think, a solid defensive team, and really all three levels look promising. Defensive line, linebackers, and secondary here for this Arkansas squad. There is a quarterback change. Felipe Franks obviously has moved on to the NFL, but they like, from all reports here in August camp, they like KJ Jefferson a lot. He's going to take over as the starting quarterback, dual threat quarterback. In fact, I think he fits the scheme of Kendall Briles very good. Kendall Briles likes a mobile quarterback. Not that Franks wasn't, but this is another level of mobile that Jefferson is. He's got like a third level, a third octane level in terms of the high level speed. He can crank it up in terms of running the football using his legs. So there definitely looks to be a team that is going to be better this year than last year, and they were already competitive last year. Here is the issue. It's the schedule, obviously. The schedule for Arkansas is difficult. There's no denying that. It's one of the toughest schedules. They are playing a pretty big gauntlet as well when you talk about the non-conference. Texas won't be an easy game for them. They should beat Rice in the opener. Actually, I like them to really whip Rice in the opener. But Texas will be a difficult game. When they get into conference play, you're looking at, home to A&M, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, home to Auburn, Mississippi State. And that they unfortunately for Arkansas, LSU, Alabama, that's what you get for playing unfortunately, in the SEC West.
Yeah.
And in the SEC East, Connor, they draw Missouri, who's going to be, I think one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the SEC East division. And, of course, Georgia, the team that's probably going to win the SEC East division. So if the SEC East division teams they drew from the opposing division, they got 2 tough ones. So that's why I think Arkansas could be a winning point spread team. I think they will be. I think you'll make money with this team. I think they'll be a profitable point spread team again, just like they were last year. They'll be competitive, but boy, the schedule in terms of the win
games.
Total,
yeah,
that's the issue. And we've seen this in the previous videos we've done, Connor. I like to bet this team week to week, Arkansas, because I think there'll be value in the number. But are they actually going to win the game straight up on the football field? Some of these games with that schedule, it's hard for me to bet the win total over. So I would rather bet this team week to week, game to game, rather than bet them over their win total. Connor, what do you think of the Arkansas Razorbacks?
Yeah, last year Arkansas, like you said, was really good for you and for me. I kind of jumped on the bandwagon. I just think the big key, is KJ Jefferson, the quarterback. That's the big one. I think the defense was good at times last year, and bringing all those players back. I think 9 starters they have. I think they'll be really good on the defensive side of the ball. So I think they beat Rice, hopefully Georgia Southern, Arkansas Pine Bluff. But you mentioned all those tough road games. They have all those tough ones, like you talked about, at LSU, at Georgia. And then the home games, they'd have to win these. Texas, Auburn, and Missouri, like you talked about. Kind of those 3 are big ones. They have Mississippi State at home. I think they're a 5-6 win football team. But, I think there's value throughout the year catching points with them. I just want to see their offense if it'll get clicking. But, this will be a team that played a lot of games that kind of in Pittman's first year, played over themselves a little bit. And maybe now that they're back to full schedule, will they be a dip a little bit? And can they win games in the end? So that's why I lean under. I think they're a 5 or 6 win team, and the total is at 5.5. I think it's right there.
Auburn Tigers, year 1 now for Brian Harsin as the Gus Malzahn era comes to a close. And Brian Harsin, former Boise State head coach, brought in as the head coach of this Auburn team. He brings in I like the coordinators. I like his staff. I'm not a big Brian Harsin fan. I thought Boise State actually got slightly worse, declined slightly under him compared to what it was like before with Chris Peterson there. But nevertheless, I like his staff. Mike Bobo's a good offensive coordinator, been around the block. And Derek Mason, I know Vanderbilt, it was a rough last couple of years there for him as head coach there, but he's a good defensive mind and a good defensive coordinator, Derek Mason. I think that was a nice, solid hire by Harsin. So I like his staff, but I don't know if I like Bo Nix as quarterback. I mean, I'm seeing this stuff, and I think I saw the same kind of reports and, adulation and, anticipation for Bo Nix last year. And everybody was saying, you know what, let's see if he looks good in camp. He's throwing the ball better. He's talking about how confident he is. I heard this nonsense last year. I heard it 2 years ago. I got to see it from Bo Nix before I buy into it. Simple as that. I'm done listening to all this conjecture about just how great he looks in camp. At some point, you got to show it in a game. At some point, you got to show consistency on the football field, and that's what we're waiting for now from Bo Nix. The O-line obviously struggled a lot last year. That was part of the problem. The O-line, is hoping to sort itself out coming into this year. It should be better, but apparently this team, they've got too many questions for me still. I mean, you got to be able to play quarterback in this conference. Bo Nix didn't do it consistently. The O-line should be better, but how much better? You're talking about a unit that struggled big time last year. The defense definitely was actually decent last year, but it was the offense that was just stuck in mud all year. I mean, just too many games where this offense just did not click. I mean, when they get blown out by LSU 48-11, they only scored 13 against Bama. They struggled to get to the 20s, against Texas A&M, and they had a terrible offensive game in their bowl game against Northwestern. So, they really have to show improvement on that offensive side of the football. I think their defense is good. I like that they bring back, I think 7 starters on defense. The defense wasn't an issue last year. It was actually pretty solid. Derek Mason's a good DC. The one issue, though, is going to be a little bit of a scheme change on defense, it looks like, because last year they had a different alignment, 4-2-5. They're going to go to a hybrid 3-4-4-3 defense. So you do have a scheme change. That usually is a learning curve. Could mean some issues early in the year. But you look at the schedule now for Auburn as well this year. They have a difficult non-conference game at Penn State, which is not at all a for sure victory for Auburn, facing Penn State in that game. Once they get into conference play, at LSU. And again, kind of like the last team we talked about, Arkansas, they get Georgia in the SEC East. So it's unfortunate. They're a West team, and one of the crossover East teams they have to play on their schedule is Georgia. So very, very difficult. Bad hand from the schedule makers, I guess you could say. And then they're at Arkansas. The Ole Miss game will be a tricky one for Auburn because I'm really high on Ole Miss. We'll get to them at Texas A&M. And then they have Mississippi State, South Carolina. Those are winnable games, but Alabama obviously would be tough at the end of the year in the Iron Bowl. Win total of 7. I'm not ready to bet this team over 7 wins. It would be under or nothing for me. I think they might be a team, too, that the defense I like more than the offense. They were kind of an under team last year, totals-wise. They might be that again. That's kind of what I'm looking at. And for Bo Nix, I'm hearing more great possibilities and how things are progressing with him in practice, in camp. Show me in game action with the bright lights on him. That's what I'm talking about now. Until then, I don't want to hear anything. Connor, what do you think of Auburn here?
Yeah, Bo Nix, he's my favorite kind of fade over the last few years. I just know he'll throw that key interception or a fumble. I mean, he's athletic, don't get me wrong. And you talked about the offensive line was pretty bad last year. He was running for his life at times. Like you said, the defense, I think, will be pretty good. And I think the games kind of will be low scoring for them. You talked about it. I think they get easy, like they can win Akron, Alabama State, maybe Georgia State. But at Penn State and home games with Alabama, Georgia, at LSU, at A&M, at 7 wins, I think this is an under team. I'd like to see, I know they talk about it's a competition, but I don't think I think Bo Nix, it's his job. But TJ Finley, I just think they need something different. If Bo Nix goes out and they lose the first couple of games and he's throwing interceptions and being kind of the same Bo Nix, I think they need to make a change there. I just think it's going to be difficult here in year one. For Auburn to get over 7 wins. So I think there's value with them under here. I think the max they could get is 6 and 7 wins, and that's what the total's at right now. I mean, I think that's the ceiling here. So I'd be on their under. I lean under here with Auburn win total.
All right, we move on now to the Florida Gators, and a team that lit it up offensively last year and couldn't stop a nosebleed, on the defensive side of the football last year. That ended up being an issue for Florida. It was good for me. I bet a lot of overs with Florida last year. It came in, but they're going to look a little bit different this year. Dan Mullen, that's the one thing that isn't different. He's back as the head coach of this team, 4th year now at Florida. Their win total is 9. Obviously, Kyle Trask moving on to the NFL. But look, the quarterback position is the one position I am not concerned about with Florida. Emory Jones, He's going to take over. He'll be fine. And he's going to be more of a dual threat quarterback, the kind of quarterback Dan Mullen's had success with in the past. Nick Fitzgerald, Dak Prescott, some of these quarterbacks he's had before with Mississippi State. And now this is the prototype Dan Mullen quarterback. Dual threat, uses his legs, is athletic, he's mobile, he can throw and be accurate enough throwing the football down the field. They'll be fine at quarterback because all this guy does is generate great college quarterbacks. I mean, name the college quarterback that's really, really sucked under Dan Mullen's tutelage. Not many. So they'll be fine. This is the one team that even though when they replace a quarterback, I don't get concerned because Dan Mullen's as good as it gets, in terms of developing good college quarterbacks. The question is the offense probably it has to take a step back. The offense was outstanding last year for the Florida Gators. They only have 5 starters back on that side of the football. You look at they've got to fill a lot of good skill position talent, including, of course, Kyle Pitts gone to the NFL. The offensive line's lost a little bit from last year as well. So this to me looks like a group that's definitely going to not be the 39.8 points per game average offense that they were last year. On the flip side, I don't think they're going to be the Civ-like 30.8 points per game allowed defense that they were last season either. They have nowhere to go but up on the defensive side of the football, and I think you will see some improvements there. Todd Grantham has got a lot of veterans now, but they had a lot of injuries too on defense. Let's not forget that. The defense was not good, but injuries really, really contributed to that. The secondary was just dreadful last year, but there's talent back there and production back there. You hope that it improves now in the second year. That's what you got to hope now for this Florida team. But on paper, this defense should be improved, and the offense will still be productive, but might take the step back. So this could be a team that a lot of overs last year with this Florida group. When you look at their season schedule last year, and you look at it and you add it up, they were 8-4 over the total last year in their games. So a lot of overs with this group last year. That might flip a little bit. They might be playing in a few more unders this year. As far as the SEC East goes, I think it's definitely going to be a good season for Florida. Their win total is 9. It feels like it's right around where it should be. I mean, I've got them probably. I think they could be 8. I think they could be 10. But I think there's a damn good chance they fall right on 9 in terms of the number of games they win this year. So I don't see much value in the win total. Maybe some value with Florida unders because, look, the offense can only go down a bit after last year, and the defense can only go up, after the way they played last year. And with more experience and less injuries, that defense should be improved. Connor, what do you think of Florida?
I'm right with you. I think they're right there. I think they're an 8, 9, 10 win football team. Trask is gone. That's a huge deal, but the defense was gashed. That's the big thing. There was a lot of turnover, offense, but you mentioned all the defense had injuries and all their problems, especially late in the year. They gave up a ton of points. And remember before Mullins, the Gators kind of was a defensive team. They had a tough time scoring before Kyle Trask, those years before, the last 5 years or so. Maybe they go back to that a little bit here. Week 3, Alabama. I think that'll be a big test. I just think it'll be a ho-hum year for Florida. I think they'll lose to Bama, Georgia, LSU, and you never know, one of these other ones, Missouri. What are the other games on their schedule? Other than that, it's pretty good. I mean, they should beat like Vandy. Kentucky's kind of one, Samford, South Carolina. So I kind of ho-hum here. I think I'd lean right on the number here with them, probably 8 or 9 wins for Dan Mullen here.
All right, we have the Georgia Bulldogs next up. If they don't win the SEC East this year, it's an absolute shocker. And if they don't win the SEC East this year, could you imagine it? Kirby Smart may not actually be back next year. Seriously, if they lose, but I don't think that's going to happen. Georgia is loaded. JT Daniels at quarterback, obviously a very experienced quarterback. He's going to be fine, in my opinion, at running this offense. He was good down the stretch. Remember, he finally took over after a knee injury midway through the year and was excellent throwing the football after that. The defense is an interesting case study because it seems like when Georgia doesn't play Alabama, or they don't play, obviously last year they played Florida and they got shredded as well. But if they don't play in like an upper echelon SEC offense, they can shut you down completely and look like one of the best defenses in the country. But there is some question marks about whether Georgia on defense is capable of shutting down an Alabama, or shutting down a team that is expected to be one of the better teams in the conference and in the country. They've had trouble. As good as their defense has been, they go up against Bama and elite offenses, and they've had their struggles at times. However, this year's team on the defensive side of the football, it is stacked. This is absolutely one of the best defenses in the country on paper. They have an incredible defensive lineman in Jordan Davis leading them up front. The linebacking core, strong, 4 5-stars and depth. Same with the secondary. They could lock you up down the field in terms of pass coverage. This is a loaded defense. If they're ever going to rise to the occasion and, beat and shut down good offensive teams. Now, the good offensive teams they're going to play on their schedule, obviously Clemson in the opener. That is a huge game for this program. That is a huge game for Kirby Smart. What has he always been criticized of? Can't win the big one. Can't beat the great team. Can't beat the elite team. Well, here's another chance and another opportunity for Georgia to beat an elite team in that scintillating season opener. I mean, it's just such a great game on paper, Georgia and Clemson. Another opportunity for Georgia to prove they can step up and win a big game and show that their defense can step up and shut down an elite offense. These are the games where the Georgia defense looks like a sieve, usually when they play a team like a Clemson. And Clemson's don't have Trevor Lawrence anymore, but they've still got weapons, a good O-line, and DJ Uiagalelei, who, is going to be fine. We saw what he did last year when Lawrence was out. So that's going to be the litmus test for this, possibly this best defense that Georgia's had under Kirby Smart. Other than that, Florida could be an offense, especially later in the year once Emory Jones gets more comfortable. They can throw some wrinkles and challenges at this Georgia defense. But if there's ever a year the Georgia defense is finally going to say, you know what, we're going to shut down an elite juggernaut offense, it's going to be this year. Otherwise, there's going to be some real concerns about whether this team will ever be that SEC champ, ever be that national champion type team that they kind of brought Kirby Smart in here to try to bring Georgia to that, that level. This is a big year for Georgia, big year for Kirby Smart. They should win the SEC East. They're hands down the best team on that side of the division, and I'd be stunned if they're not playing Alabama for the SEC championship in December. As far as the win total goes, can't touch it. Can't touch it. Can't touch it. Can't touch this with Georgia's win total. I mean, it's 10.5, right? You have 2 losses you have 1 loss worth of wiggle room. So what if they lose the opener to Clemson? They then have to run the table the rest of the way. I wouldn't be comfortable with an over at 10.5. I think they could land on 11, which is also why I wouldn't play it under. So I'm not involved in the win total when it comes to Georgia. As far as the point spread goes, going to be Clemson is obviously a bettable game based on where the number is, but after that, game to game, will they be a point spread profitable point spread team? You look at last year, they were only 4-6 against the spread last year, but you're still not going to get bargains weekly with Georgia. So I kind of think they're going to be 500, maybe a slight money loser this year ATS. So team that I'm going to have to be very careful of and only pick specific spots maybe to back them. Connor, what do you think of Georgia?
Yeah, I think they're loaded. I think the big is week 1 against Clemson. That's it. If they win that game, I think you're over 10.5. You're pretty good. But yeah, it's not something I'd rush into the window to get. They win week 1. I think they get over 10.5. The juice is high on it, minus 130, 140, some spots. You got Daniels back at quarterback, who looked good once he came in at the end of the year last year. And that defense, though, that's where I think they're loaded. The problem was they kind of had that last year, but they had a lot of COVID injuries and kind of got gashed. And it was, they had to go to their second, third type guys on the depth chart. But, man, they're loaded on that side of the ball. And you talked about it, no Alabama. Their schedule after that is just kind of easy. UAB, South Carolina, at Vandy. Arkansas's at home, at Auburn, Kentucky. It just sets up for them just to easily win the division here. So that's why Clemson's the big one. I think that's they win that. This could be an undefeated year, maybe a 1-loss slip up. They lose that, it could be 10-2. Yeah. So I wouldn't go crazy on it. I lean the over 10.5 a little bit just because their schedule and just how loaded they are.
There's one thing to note about Georgia. We think of this team as, a team that doesn't always play in shootouts. This offense, this particular season, under Todd Monken, who is now the offensive coordinator now for this Georgia team. They're looking to air it out a little bit more this year because they've got a
the
quarterback
athletes and the
with a
speed.
rocket arm, and they've
Yeah.
got the speed at the receiver positions. The Georgia team totals over. Maybe not game totals because, you got to rely on the other team to score against what could be an elite defense this year. But maybe those Georgia team total overs, you could bet some of those this year, and I think cash some. Because I think they're looking to get a little more vertical in the passing game, stretch the field a little bit more. That's what I've heard throughout camp for Georgia. And if they follow through on that promise and that directive, then they might be a team that goes over some team totals this year. So that might be a bet I look to make. And then you don't have to worry about these big point spreads, right? With Georgia, it's kind of like baseball. Don't worry about the starting pitcher for your own team. Just worry about your lineup hitting the other team's pitching. Kind of like betting team totals in football. You don't have to worry about, what the other team does against the defense. Just worry on, I like this quarterback and this offense against this team to stretch the field, move the ball, put up touchdowns, put up points. That could be a good way to go with Georgia. Maybe look for some team total overs with them this year. Kentucky Wildcats next up. A very fascinating group this year, 5-6 straight up last year. But you look at a couple of those losses, pretty close competitive defeats. They could have beaten Ole Miss, very close in that game. The Auburn game was disappointing for them in the opener. But 5-6 straight up, they fall short of bowl eligibility. Had the tough loss, a couple of close losses, tougher schedule last year as well. Mark Stoops' ninth year. I think there's some potential for this group, and I like what they've done here in camp. For years they've had issues with a quarterback that can throw the ball. It's been Lynn Bowden, it's been Terry Wilson, it's been all these quarterbacks that just can't throw an accurate pass half the time. And now they have committed, and early in camp, they have committed to the Penn State transfer, Will Levis, to be the new starting quarterback. And I remember seeing this guy play whenever Sean Clifford didn't play well for Penn State last year. They'd bench him for a little bit, and this Levis kid would come in, and he'd actually spark the Penn State offense. He's a dual.
Yeah, he did.
He's got great wheels. He can run the football. He's got a good arm. I love the quarterback choice. I'm so glad for Kentucky, and I'm happy for their fans. Obviously, they don't probably have as many Kentucky football fans as Kentucky basketball fans, but I am happy for them that they don't have to put up with Joey Gatewood anymore, and don't have to worry about him anymore. He's transferred out once he realized he wasn't going to get the starting job. Good riddance. And kudos to Mark Stoops. He didn't screw around. He's not even the middle of August. He stepped up last weekend and said, Will Levis is my quarterback, and I'm confident we're going to have a good offense with him. That's what I like to see. I don't like these teams that are non-committal and they wait till the last minute, day or two before the first game before they announce their starting quarterback. They clearly have confidence in this guy, and I think there's reason to have confidence in him. I think there's a skill set there that he can be a good quarterback for this Kentucky team. When you look at the defensive side of the football, Kentucky's been competitive on the defensive side of the football. You're in a tough conference every year, but to see what they've been able to do defensively, it's been decent at times. They've had to carry so much with some nagging problems offensively for this Kentucky team in recent years. Last year they only gave up 25.9 points per game. That's not terrible. I think the offense will improve on the 21.8 points per game they scored last year, with the quarterback announcement being made with Will Levis, who I think could be a little bit of an under the radar, solid SEC quarterback this year, and maybe the best quarterback Kentucky's had in years. I look at them as maybe a bet on team and a winning point spread team this year. I wasn't going to say that had they gone in another direction at quarterback. If it was Gatewood, I would probably fade this team. But now with them going to Levis, I think there's potential there offensively for them. I think they could be a winning point spread team this year. And I think Kentucky, after years of being this brutal offense, solid defense, low scoring, 21-17, 24-21 type football games they'd be involved in, I think they look to open it up a little. They've got the quarterback, I think, where they feel they might have success doing that. A sneaky over the total team with their game totals this year. I could see that being in the cards for the Kentucky Wildcats. Connor, what's your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, seems like there's a few people I know high on Kentucky here. I like Levis too. Like you talked about when he got in, at Penn State, like he would give a spark sometimes watching those games. So I like to see what he'll do here at Kentucky. I always kind of like Mark Stoops. I just like what he's kind of done at Kentucky. He always brings out the best he can kind of in his players. especially like the line in whether it's the offensive line, defensive line. Man, they have a bunch of games early I think they can win. So I know their win total's here at 7. I don't know if they get there. I think they might get to 6 because they got Monroe, Chattanooga. They got New Mexico State at Vandy. I mean, I think there's 4 there that they win. Can they get at Louisville, Mississippi State at home, Tennessee, at South Carolina? So their win total, I think, is right there. I think they'll be a good team this year. I think they definitely go 6-6. And they're a team that I would look to catch points, but maybe early on they're going to be laying points to a few of these teams. But once they play Florida, LSU, maybe catching points. I've always loved to catch double-digit points with the Kentucky Mark Stoops team. So I'll look for some value there. We'll see about the points being scored. So I'm going to wait. I mean, I like to see it, but I got to really see it because, man, the last few years it's been a struggle for them to put points on the board regularly.
I think they're putting points on the board and a lot of points on the board in week 1 against UL Monroe. That team, is going to be one of the worst teams in college football. I actually laid the 28.5 when I got it with Kentucky in that game. I think that's a romp. I think there's a statement to be made. New era. I think arguably a guy that could be one of their better quarterbacks in a few years here. The defense is, I think, still going to be pretty good. I think there's a slight drop off from last year defensively, but there's going to be a big improvement offensively for this Kentucky team. And that's why I also like them over their totals this year. I don't know about that first game, though, because I don't know if Monroe's going to score against Kentucky in that game on the road. But I think they put an absolute beat down on UL Monroe in that game, Kentucky, in that opener. So I'm not scared to lay the point. Maybe a first half Kentucky if you don't like the full game either. Just a little spoiler there for that week 1 that I do like the Wildcats as significant favorites in that opener against the UL Monroe is just a world of hurt. We'll get to them when we do the non-power 5, but they got big issues. Next up, we've got LSU in the SEC conference preview here. LSU, obviously, a disappointing year last year. We kind of thought they'd take a step back, right? You go from national championship, Joe Burrow and company. We knew this team lost a lot of pieces from that group, but I don't think we expected things to be quite as bad as they were for LSU. Just a mediocre 500 season, 5-5 straight up on the year. They actually were, believe it or not, 6-4 against the spread. So they actually still were a profitable point spread team, and they finished the season strong. They beat Arkansas, they beat Texas A&M. They did get obliterated by Alabama, but everybody did last year. And then they had the shocker, a huge upset at Florida in the second last game of the year, and then they pulled out a wild one against Ole Miss. So it was a nice finish to the year, otherwise disappointing year for LSU. Of course, this year, the big problems, of course, are Miles Brennan out for most of the year now, and it's going to be down to Max Johnson as the quarterback. But I don't think that's a big deal. Max Johnson and Miles Brennan were neck and neck in terms of competing for the starting quarterback spot for LSU. I don't think that's a big deal for them. Max Johnson should be fine. This team could be one of the more improved teams in this entire country this year because of the injuries, the COVID situation they had last year. I definitely think this team is much improved from last year. Question is, has it been accounted for in the betting markets? Their win total is 8. I think that's a pretty fair number. I think they'll be 8, 9, potential to fall to 7, but I think 8's their floor. It's a question of do they get to 9, because when you look at the schedule, they still have to play Alabama. They still have to play A&M, still have to play Florida. Some tough games on that schedule, and UCLA is not for sure a given for them in the first game of the year against the Bruins on the road in LA. So, but I do think this team will be much, much better this year. I think Max Johnson will be fine at the quarterback spot. The offense has 9 starters back. The defense has 9 starters back. Remember, the defense got ripped by injuries last year. The offense had a ton of their skill position talent wiped out prior to last year by departure from the Burrow national title team. That offense and those skill position players at wide receiver and the back should be more experienced and better ready to produce and play better this year. So, yeah, absolutely. LSU is one of those teams I expect to take a jump forward again this year. I don't think last year is a sign of this program is going to fall completely off the tracks this year and moving forward. I think they recruit too well. Orgeron. They love the guy,
Yes.
and that southern drawl of his. They're go Tigers, with a great defense here. I gotta love that voice of his. But I think that it's a better year for LSU, and I'll be looking for spots to bet on them, no question. I'm fine with Max Johnson as the quarterback. Like I said, him and Miles Brennan were both capable options. I think the offense will move the football. They'll score some points. The defense will improve. Better year ahead for LSU, in my opinion. Connor, what do you think of the LSU Tigers?
Yeah, I think either guy at quarterback will be good. You talked about all those starters they're bringing back. You talked about from the national championship team. They just so many lost guys. They were so young last year. COVID. It seemed like that was a program that just kind of went, oh shit, they got their ass kicked early. But like you said, they played better down the stretch. But that is nothing like an LSU defense. So they got to get back. But Bo Pelini's gone. They got a new defensive coordinator. So maybe their defense will be better, and they're bringing back 9 guys. So I think they're right here. I think they get over 8 wins. So I'm just over that as well. The big one, UCLA early. They got Auburn at home. They have Florida at home. The big one, Alabama on the road and at the road at Ole Miss. But other than that, I think, they can win at Monroe, McNeese, Central Michigan, maybe Kentucky they'll win. So I think they're right there. I don't think there's a ton of value. I lean over because I think they'll be a little bit better, and they got tons of talent. I slightly lean over on their win total this year, and I'm maybe in spots. I want to see them early on, if they're going to be laying more points, or I could catch some points in some of these games with them throughout the year.
That may not be possible because I look at the schedule, and I think they're probably going to be favored in every game except maybe at Ole Miss and maybe definitely at Alabama.
Alabama, yeah, they'll be favored home against Florida, home against A&M, maybe. Yeah. So yeah.
So there won't be many underdog spots for LSU, but they might be able to cover as favorites this year with an offense that should be much better with Max Johnson. And again, a lot healthier on that side of the ball as well. A lot of returning production back, offense, defense. So good to see. And by the way, that's just from last year to this year with the talent change, with the roster now healthy, and everybody now in year 2. This team definitely has gone up, shot up the map in a lot of people's power ratings going into, including mine, going into this year. Like they ended last year just way down, and they're starting the year already up a bunch from where they ended last year, which tells you this team's probably pegged for some significant improvement. The Ole Miss Rebels next up here. And by the way, you're right. Bo Pelini being gone, that's addition by subtraction. That defense was pathetic with him. It's going to be better
just time.
He's out of there. Yeah. No doubt about that. Ole Miss Rebels now. Next up, Lane Kiffin, year 2. I give him credit. Last year, it was a 5-5 straight up year, but you look at it, they almost beat LSU. Last year, they should have won that game. They lost 53-48. They were right there to beat Auburn. They hung tough in a loss against Arkansas. Alabama, they scored 48 points against Alabama. You're doing something right. Unfortunately, they lost that game because they couldn't stop them. But that tells you all you need to know about Ole Miss. This offense is going to be absolutely spectacular this year. There's no question about that. The offensive line is loaded. All starters back. Matt Corral could be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, if not the country this year. That offense is going to be incredible. That offense is going to be extremely difficult to stop for anybody. Say what you will about Lane Kiffin, but he knows how to call plays. He knows how to scheme an offense. He's good on that side of the ball. You saw what he did last year. They've got weapons galore this year, both running back, wide receiver. They've got the O-line. They've got the quarterback. They're going to put up points in bunches. Simple as that. The key for Ole Miss is, can that defense shore things up? It was a bad defense last year. 9 returning starters, though, are back. The defense should be not only improved, Connor, I think they could be much improved, that defense, with what they're bringing back. And it's going to be good to see. I agree. I think there's a lot of potential for that defense to be a lot better this season. Say what you will about how DJ Durkin struggled as a head coach, but he's a solid defensive coordinator. I think that defense definitely will be improved this year. And that offense, man, they are going to be a juggernaut in this conference. I mean, they're going to be right up there with, I think, as one of the best offensive teams in this conference. They just get some defense, and this is going to be a very good team. I like this team over their win total. It's one of my favorite win total bets in the SEC this year. Ole Miss over 7.5 wins. I think they get there. Last year, they were 5-5, not only straight up, but against the spread. I think they'll be a winning point spread team. They scored 39.2 points per game last year. I think they're going to improve that this year. I think they're going to score 40s in a lot of games. Hell, maybe even crack 50 in a few. And that defense, 38.3 points per game, that was the Achilles heel last year. I think they're going to be improved. And another thing I like about Ole Miss, look, we're dealing with Southern teams here. It's why it's the SEC. Vaccination rates. I don't want to bring this up too much, but Lane Kiffin, and rightfully so, is just going on about how proud he is that his team has 100% vaccination rate. Everybody, coaches, players, everybody has gotten the COVID vaccine. And we're not making this political or whether you should get it or not. What I'm saying is this team's less likely to suffer COVID issues and COVID absences and have, guys in the COVID protocol list, less likely to have that happen, Ole Miss, with everybody vaccinated now. So that's a bet on thing from a betting standpoint for Ole Miss coming into this year. I like this team a lot, bottom line. I'm even sprinkling a couple bucks on them to win the SEC. It's crazy. I wouldn't go ballistic, betting too much on that, but that's how much I think of this team, that they could be one of those teams that really could rise up in the tough division, SEC West, the toughest division in college football, but a lot to like, in my opinion, for Ole Miss. Connor, what do you think of the Ole Miss Rebels?
Yeah, just to touch on it, we did it, last year with COVID. It's a little different this year. We're going forward, but you're going to have the list like a team like Ole Miss where you don't have to look week to week where they have 20 kids or something that aren't vaxxed. So keep that in mind, because that's something you got to basically put in your handicap and look at from week to week. I like Ole Miss as well too. Their win total is 7.5. I think they're right around there. I want to see the defense. I got to kind of see it to believe it. And I think they will be better. They're going to light it up. Great quarterback, running back early. It's really good. They got the skill positions, the receivers that are great. I think they have easy wins. I think they beat Austin Peay, Tulane. I think they beat Tennessee. Liberty's a good one. A&M. Kind of a Vandy, that's a win. I think they'll pull an upset. They'll maybe beat Bama. Maybe they beat LSU. But I could see them lose, I don't know, Mississippi State, one that they don't. So I see them. I think they're going to be super exciting to watch. Must-see TV, this offense. But I got to wait on the defense. I think they're a 7-win team. I think Lane Kiffin, I think they do a great job and they take a step up. But I think they're right there, 7 or 8 wins here.
All right, we go from one Mississippi to Mississippi to the other one, Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, Mike Leach. And one thing I know about Mike Leach, Texas Tech Mike Leach, Washington State Mike Leach, year 1 to year 2, there's an improvement every single time with this guy. And it wouldn't surprise me to see that again this year, an improvement from the Bulldogs. Will Rogers, the quarterback, struggled early but got better last year as the season went along. Look, it's a complex system. That air raid that Leach employs, it's not easy to grasp it quickly or early. It took time, and now there should be a lot more. Year 2 of this particular system is always that situation where we see that improvement from a Mike Leach team, and I think we're going to see that again this year. Will Rogers, they bring in Jack Abraham as well, the Southern Miss transfer, to compete at the quarterback spot. I still think Rogers is going to end up getting it, but there is still a competition that's ongoing. No starter's been named yet for this year. When you look at the defense, it's going to be interesting to see how they fare. I thought the defense, 28.1 points per game. They obviously had a tough time of it in a couple of their games last year defensively, but I thought for the most part, defense was decent at times. I mean, you look at Georgia Ole Miss games, they were right in those games, lost by a touchdown to 2 pretty good teams on the road, and they held them to 31. 2 good teams, 2 good offenses, which is actually, I think, a sign that Mississippi State's defense last year was pretty solid, and it was actually their offense that was holding them back and costing them games. I mean, they just had a dreadful time moving the football last year. 4-7 straight up. They did go 5-6 against the spread last year, so I think they'll improve on that. This is probably a profitable point spread team. They'll probably improve on their win total as well last year. The question is, will they improve on it enough to go over the win total of 6? I do think they're an ATS profitable team, looking to back them. I do think there's improvement. Is there enough to go? Like, they need 7 wins, to get over that win total. When you look at the schedule, the good news for them is in the teams that they play in the crossover, the SEC East division this year, you could do worse than Kentucky and Vanderbilt. There's no Florida, there's no Georgia. That is a good sign for Mississippi State in terms of the schedule. So I think it's going to be real close, whether there's 6 or 7 wins. But more than anything, they'll be improved. The offense will really be improved. And now this is where Mississippi State, last year, it wasn't always easy for them to see their games go over the total. This year, I think they get back to more higher scoring football, systems in place, second year under Leach. You see this team probably cash a few more overs with their game totals this year. Conor Mac, what do you think of Mississippi State?
That's what I want to see. I know Leach, I can't doubt him. Wherever he goes, like you said, especially his second or third year, he seems to win. So this one's difficult for me. I lean under this team a little bit. I just don't know their offense. And maybe it's going to take a little bit for Leach to get it really going there. I don't think they have a ton of playmakers. And the defense at times played good, like you talked about. I think they have some winnable games. I just think I think they'll be a good team to take the points with. I think they'll cover some numbers this year. I will be on them. They definitely could stay with some teams and games, like you talked about, by losing just by a touchdown, stuff like that. I think you'll catch numbers with them. I think they win 5 games. Right around there. Even La Tech, they're at Memphis. They should win those. Tennessee State, they should win. Maybe at Vandy, Kentucky. I don't know. Those are the ones they got to win. So, and the other ones are LSU at A&M, at Arkansas, home to Auburn, home to Ole Miss. So I think they're just back at about a 4 to 5 win team. I think it'll be difficult. But, hey, I doubt Mike Leach. He'll probably – he could win 6 or 7 games. We'll see. So this one's kind of up in the air that I'm just not really high or low on here.
All right, Missouri Tigers, Eli Drinkwitz, his second year at the helm, 5-5 straight up last year, as well as against the spread. So exact same straight up and ATS record for the Tigers last year. I like the offense a lot coming into this year, and that's Eli Drinkwitz's background is the offense. He's the co-offensive coordinator of this team. Connor Bazelak returns as the starting quarterback here for the Tigers. He was really good down the stretch. I thought, early in the year he's adjusting, took over the starting quarterback spot, but then, had some rough games earlier in the year. But boy, there was games where they really shined. 45 against LSU, 50 spot against Arkansas, 41 against Vanderbilt. I thought they had some good offensive performances. He's going to be better this year. They got a lot to work with in terms of the receiving core. However, a couple of those receivers just got injured, like just days ago in camp. So keep an eye on that position. That's a position of strength and depth. A couple key injuries there, though, in camp. So watch out for that. And let's see if these guys are ready to go for week 1 of the year. So the offense, though, I like quite a bit. O-line should be really good up front. The defense, though, is going to be the question mark. They really struggled on that side of the football, especially down the stretch. The good news for the Tigers this year is they do have 7 returning starters back, but still there's question marks there. And there's going to be a scheme change because they bring in a new defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, who was most recently the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And now he's back as the DC here at Missouri. I think he's a good defensive mind in time, but again, scheme changes. Defense kind of struggled last year. We'll have to wait and see. Missouri, initially I was thinking bet on them, and they still might be, but now with Kentucky making a nice quarterback decision to go with Levis, because I thought Missouri and Kentucky going to be neck and neck in this division, I might put Kentucky now just a little ahead of Missouri, especially now with the wide receiver injuries for Missouri. If they have those receivers healthy, though, and ready for week 1, they are going to be a team that I'll be looking potentially to bet on, but more than that, over the total with Missouri games this year. I think they're going to score points. That offense is built to score points. They should have a very good offense throughout this year. And the defense, though, is still the question mark, and a coordinator change there, and a scheme change there. So let's see if they got their ducks in a row with their receiving core for week 1. And if they do, I'm going to be looking over the total, probably as early as that first opening game for Missouri against Central Michigan. I could see there being points scored in that game. So keep an eye on the receiving situation. But my initial thoughts right now are look for spots to bet Missouri, chance for profitability, but more than anything, I think an over the total team with their game totals. Connor, what's your take on Missouri?
Yeah, we'll see you in year 2 here. Eli Drinkowitz full season to go with. I like Bazelak. I think he had a decent year last year. The defense is just totally up in the air. I don't know what I'm gonna get. Are they going to be better with the new scheme like you're talking about and the whole thing? Are they going to be worse? So I just don't know. I think they'll be able to score points, and I think they win games here. I mean, they got one at Boston College. That's a big one. But should win Central Michigan, Missouri State, like South Carolina's at home, North Texas, at Vandy. Their win total 7. I think they're right there, and I think they're right on the number. I think they could get a loss at Kentucky, A&M. They're at Georgia, so this is tough. I think they're right there at 7 wins. I think it'd be 6 or 8. I'm a little bit high on them, but their numbers at 7, I think they're spot on. But they're a team I want to see just on the defensive side early, because I do think they score points, and they have some receivers. They have some guys that are really good at the skill positions. So points, but maybe not on the defense. So maybe an over team like you talked about. I can't wait to see them this year.
All right, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks now. Next up, the Will Muschamp era, thankfully over, mercifully over if you're a South Kakalaki fan. Shane Beamer brought in, son of the legend Frank Beamer, to be the new head coach of this South Carolina team. A lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement for him taking over as the head coach. He's been at Oklahoma on Lincoln Riley's staff the last couple of years. There's a lot to like in terms of just the demeanor he's bringing, but does he have the talent on the football field? That's going to be the question here. They should be better than last year, but look, I don't know if that's a big time accolade or anything, considering how bad they were last year. Yeah, they could be a little bit better, but the miserable year for the South Carolina. 2-8 straight up, 3-7 against the spread last year. We'll see how it goes. Marcus Satterfield, the new offensive coordinator. The quarterback spot still definitely up in the air. We'll have to see how it goes. Luke Doty, questions about how good he can be moving forward. They haven't named a starter yet right now either. So that's up in the air defensively last year for this South Carolina team. And the problem is they only have 5 returning starters on defense, and the defense it's been bad for 2 years, the South Carolina defense, and it was just absolutely a sieve last year. I mean, they're giving up 41 points to Kentucky, and that was Kentucky's offense last year, which was nothing to write home about. 59 to Ole Miss, 45 to Georgia, 52 to LSU. I mean, they just gave up some brutal numbers on the defensive side of the football last year. In time, I think this is going to be a team that improves, but there's too many other teams that are going to improve, Connor, in my opinion. And South Carolina's got way more of a gap to close with the other teams in this conference than, say, Missouri or Kentucky or some of these other teams. I think they're going to be good. Unfortunately, for this year, it's thumbs down for me on South Carolina. I think it's going to be growing pains type of season for Shane Beamer. Connor, what do you think, South Carolina?
The big key, it's been there for years now, even when they could go 6-6, or 75, is the quarterback. South Carolina never has a great quarterback. They got a guy a game manager, and not knowing who the quarterback's going to be, I just don't like. Kevin Harris is a great running back. They're going to have to lean on him. I mean, he's their best player. They do have some games, Eastern Illinois, Troy. They have Vandy at home. At East Carolina could be big. Could that be that game? Their win total is 3.5. I lean just over, but it's -165. I'm not going to take it, but I think they could get 4 wins, but that's about the limit. I don't think they could to get any more. They're going to be at the bottom of the barrel here. Just too much of a separation, like you talked about. It's going to take a few years with Shane Beamer here.
Yes, I would agree with that. All right, we move on now to the Tennessee Volunteers. Going to be interesting to see how this team evolves. Of course, it's been another program that's been just toiled in disaster, really, for the last several years. Right now, Tennessee 6 is their win total. I am not betting this team over that win total. In fact, if you get 6.5, I like their win total under. And it is a bet I made when there was a 6.5. I found a 6.5 at a couple books. I did bet it under. This is just too much, to overcome. Josh Heupel, you could argue actually Josh Heupel, the new head coach, of course, was UCF's head coach the last couple of years, was Missouri's offensive coordinator before that. You could argue they actually went backward a bit, UCF under Josh Heupel. Scott Frost had them, winning AAC championships and in New Year's Six bowl games. UCF kind of underachieved to that level under Josh Heupel. So, pump the brakes on whether this is that great hire. You think they're obviously going to go from just a massive change in scheme offensively. This has been a plotting, methodical, run-heavy, pro-style offense in recent years. Now they're going to go to spread and, lightning speed, up-tempo offense, which is where that's the type of offense that Heupel's had everywhere, UCF and Missouri before that. The question is, does he have the horses in the stable, so to speak, to execute that offense? A significant scheme change. There's going to be a quarterback competition ongoing. Michigan transfer Joe Milton is here. Hendon Hooker transfers over from Virginia Tech. I think he's probably the favorite to win the job, but no starter's been named yet for Tennessee in terms of the quarterback battle right now. The defense was never any good under Heupel at UCF. And when you look at the Tennessee squad on the defensive side, not good defensively last year. I don't know if there's going to be massive improvement from them. This is a team that gave up 44 to Georgia, 34 to Kentucky, 48 to Alabama, 30 to Auburn. Auburn scores 30, and Auburn's offense wasn't very good last year. And they still score 30 against Tennessee's defense. So big problems on the defensive side of the football last year. They could be a little better, but I don't think they're going to be extremely better. One thing, though, is the offense. If it's Hooker at quarterback, he did show signs of being a solid quarterback. And more than anything, Tennessee, this is a team I'm jumping on overs with them, because just based on the system and the scheme going from, methodical to up tempo, they do have the offensive line's actually not in a brutal shape. So I could see them putting up some points. Problem is they're going to have a hard time stopping people. That's just the way it's going to be for them on defense. So this is going to be a team I'm looking to bet over the total in their games. But as far as their win total, I'm looking under, and I'm probably looking at spots to fade Tennessee ATS during the season, because I think they're going to be hard-pressed to be a team that's going to turn a profit for their backers. It's just a tough situation. It is a massive overhaul roster-wise. By the way, Tennessee got absolutely raided in the transfer portal in the offseason. They lost so many of their whatever better players they had last year. So many of them got taken by other teams in the transfer portal. Keep that in mind. So this is going to be a very, very thin defense. I think there is some upside for the offense, but it's not going to result in a lot of wins for this team. I think they're going to have a tough time covering numbers, even if they are, priced a little bit lower in the betting markets. But more than anything, too, over the total in their games, I think they're going to be involved in some shootouts this year, going to that up-tempo, fast-paced offense under Heupel. Conor Mac, what do you think of Tennessee?
Yeah, it's going to be a whole different thing for Tennessee Volunteer fans. This bringing in Heupel and the whole offense. Do they have the players for it? I don't like, all three of these guys in the quarterback conversation. Their defense isn't really good. They've lost a ton, like you talked about. This is not the year. I think he's got to look year 2, 3, get recruiting again there for Tennessee. I think they could get – I like their under 6 wins as well. I know some people think they can get 6 wins. I don't think so. I mean, Bowling Green, Tennessee Tech, South Alabama, Vandy, maybe 3 or 4 wins, because they pull an upset, beat South Carolina. To me, their max is 5 wins in this team this year. So if you could, like you said, if you get a 6 and a hook, I'd really like that. I think totally lean under there, because I think they lose. That one early against Pitt will be interesting. I think it's week 1 or 2. Week 2, I think. That'd be an interesting one, that game. I can't wait to see that, how they look there and who's going to be the quarterback. So if they could pull that win, that'd be big for their win total. But maybe a team that catch points with that could stay in a game, but defensively, they're not ready yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We move on now to Texas A&M, the Aggies here, as a team that a lot of people like coming into this year. The Texas A&M squad, 9.5 is their win total. Jimbo Fisher, 4th year at the helm, 9-1 straight up last year for A&M. Their only loss was at Alabama. They ended up being still a pretty good point spread team as well, 9-1 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. Will they be a point spread team this year, though? That's going to be the question. See, I think they're going to be very good again this year, and here's why. Usually when you lose a quarterback, you get worried. Are you going to be able to be as good offensively? I'm not worried. Kellen Mond was a good quarterback. He was never a great elite quarterback.
Yeah, he
I'm not
wasn't.
too worried about that. He never was. They're fine. There's a battle going on. Haynes King, Zach Calzada, in terms of the quarterback position going into this year for Texas A&M. So we'll have to wait and see who they end up going with. They have not made a decision yet, between King and Calzada, and we'll have to wait and see who ends up being the quarterback. When you look at this team on the defensive side of the football, there's definitely a lot to like about A&M. 9 starters back. This team has, the O-line does have some questions as well. They've lost a couple of 3 of their starters from that group. But boy, the defense looks like it should be outstanding. It's loaded up front on the defensive line. It's solid at the linebacker spot. It's got depth in the secondary. There is no doubt this is going to be a defense that's going to be tough to move the football against on paper. It's going to be a question of, can the O-line hold up? And, will the quarterback, whoever it ends up being, will they be able to play well? And I don't think there's that big drop-off that some people would expect, losing a multi-year starter like Mond and going to either King or Calzada as your new starting quarterback here for Texas A&M this year. So, it definitely should be a Texas A&M team. That defense is going to be very, very good, loaded on that side of the ball. Yeah, the offense, I think the quarterback position, there'll be very little, if any, drop-off, because they're saying good things about the 2 quarterbacks battling for the starting job right now. The O-line, a little suspect, but they've got weapons still for them if that O-line can hold up. Going to be a really good team. Just a question of, will there be point spread value with them? I'm not sure. In terms of their win total, 9.5. There's a world where I could see them being a 10-win team this year, Texas A&M.
Only there's their schedule. I think that's
schedule.
right.
Yeah, exactly. They're 3-0 to start the year guaranteed. They should beat Arkansas at home. They should beat Mississippi State. Alabama's the tough one, but at Missouri's winnable. South Carolina, Auburn, Ole Miss, and the SEC East teams they draw are Missouri and South Carolina. No Georgia, no Florida on this schedule for A&M. So at 9.5, I'd lean over the win total. I don't love it, but I would lean that way. Connor, your thoughts on A&M?
Yeah, one thing is the talent is there, the coaching's there. The quarterback is the question mark. And their defense, I like what they're bringing back on defense. Like I said, they have talent there on the defensive side of the ball, especially the D line is really, really good. But look, like we just talked about, I thought, wow, they got it easy to start the year. All these teams, Kent State, Colorado, Prairie View, all these teams they have there in their schedule. And I think they're a 9-win team there, and I think they get a win, either Ole Miss or LSU maybe. So that would get them a 10-win season. I couldn't go over 9.5. If I were to bet this, I'd bet under 9.5. I just think, in my eyes, I think they win 8 or 9 games because the question mark of the quarterback. But man, that schedule is favorable. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to personally bet. It's one I thought about because I thought 9.5 was a little high, but their schedule is pretty easy. And I don't know the quarterback. That scares the shit out of me. But these kids come out, whoever can win it, and they start lighting up, and there's your guy. You get one, in college. That could happen here.
We wrap it up with the Vanderbilt Commodores, expected to be the bottom feeders and the cellar dwellers of the SEC. Derek Mason gone. Clark Lee, the new head coach of this Vanderbilt team. Look, defensive coordinator for Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. So, good pedigree. And from all reports, the hire is very well liked there. He's a Vanderbilt guy, but, it's going to be a challenging long-term rebuild. It's simple as that. The offense has to improve for Vanderbilt. I mean, that's really what stunted them a lot. Well, the defense was bad. The whole team was bad last year. Obviously, when you're 0-9 straight up last year, they actually did cover the number 4 times last year.
Did.
So they ended up 4-5.
I had them a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though they were winless straight up, Vanderbilt did cover numbers. 3.5 is their win total. I can't play it over. I'm not playing it under either, but because I do think this team's going to be more competitive. There are things I like about the hire. He's a very, very good defensive mind, and I think that's where they're going to have to hang their hat, the defense, because, Kenny Seals, the quarterback, just promise at times and just absolutely brutal at other times. It really was a flip a coin. What game, what kind of performance are you going to get one day to the next from Ken Seals, the quarterback. So we're going to have to see some improvement from him. The defense obviously just completely fell off a cliff last year. You got to think with Lee's defensive mind, it's going to be a little bit better at least. Look, I'm not saying they're going to win many, if any, SEC games, but we got to be careful here because I'm seeing stuff like, underdogs to Colorado State. Like, seriously? That's where we're putting Vanderbilt right now. Like, I know this team is a bottom feeder in the SEC, but underdogs to Colorado State, which has been a mediocre, middling Mountain West team forever.
Mountain West team. Yeah.
You better believe I'm tempted to bet Vandy in that game.
Hell yeah.
I absolutely am. Let's wait. Let's see I want to get good reports about the offense because that's going to be what I'm most concerned about. The offensive line's in flux. There's not a great depth in terms of their skill position talent. Ken Seals is a massive, massive inconsistent quarterback in the past. I'm going to have to see good reports, but I think the defense could be somewhat decent this year. I'm not saying good. They won't be good, but decent, at least better than last year, which they obviously should be with Clark Lee's defensive background coming in here. So, and look, they covered 4 numbers last year, 4-5 against the spread, even when things were falling apart. You're going to get value in the number with with Vanderbilt. It's going to be whether they're good enough to cover some of those numbers. And in the case of some of these opponents they play in the non-conference, they might be good enough to cover some of these numbers. So believe it or not, even though things are going to be tough from a straight up standpoint, from an ATS standpoint, maybe some hope to find some spots to pick off some really, really value-laden numbers and inflated numbers on the Commodores. If the early reports of this hire are very, very good, if they translate to results and improved play on the field, this might be a team you could cash some tickets with way under the radar. Connor, what do you think here, Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to win many games this year. I think their ceilings could be 3 wins. But like you talked about it, these are the teams I look for taking them, getting 35 points, stuff like that. I think they could be in games. I think it'll be tough defensively. Maybe they're better. I know Clark, that's his thing. And you talked about Seals. He was so up and down. Watching him at quarterback is like, holy shit. I mean, sometimes he could make this incredible pass and he fumbles. He just looks so. I think though, but a game like at Colorado State, SEC team, I'd take points with Vandy there. I gotta see them here early. But UConn, East Tennessee State. I mean, I think they're for their win totals right here. Can they get 2 or 3 maybe? But yeah, I'm going to look at more of his values, catching huge points as dogs everywhere. I mean, could there be a game maybe at Tennessee? Well, we don't know. Is Tennessee going to be that good? Where they could, could they go there and maybe get a win? Stuff like that, or maybe South Carolina. So a few spots where I could see Vandy maybe getting right there at about 3 wins.
All right, that is the SEC. Everybody was excited to hear about this conference, and there it is, the SEC betting preview for 2021. Connor and I will continue on with these college football betting preview videos all week long right here on Pub Sports Radio. For Conor Mac, I'm Ian Cameron. Hope you enjoyed the SEC preview, and as always, thank you for watching.